Good afternoon, everyone. It's a humble experience to be here, and I'm going to be, when you're coming to a conference like this, you think, I'm going to start off with some sort of witty anecdote or something like this, and then of course a politician comes in the morning and completely grenades that idea from the start. So fundamentally, if I go back today, I'm going to address the elephant in the room. I think that the Precision Technology Act was a fundamentally game-changing piece of legislation. It had opened up a huge amount of potential. And I'm going to be talking through the story of PIC's genetic potential and what we can bring to the market through that act. But what did we hear this morning? We simply heard, and secondary legislation is coming in plants. Now, don't get me wrong, I think that is a fundamentally great thing, and I'm truly excited about it. But what about animals? That act remains an empty shell of regulation. I think that's really disappointing. We need to continue to push on that, and I'm going to share with you the story of why. I am a huge fan of livestock agriculture, a complete nerd when it comes to livestock agriculture. Before I was a geneticist, I grew up on the farm. And I could not, in my journey through agricultural education, decide what I wanted to do. Why? Because like most farmers, you have to do everything, right? I didn't know if I wanted to be a vet. I didn't know if I wanted to be a nutritionist, an animal welfarist. What's the one thing that links everything together? It's the animal itself. And this is the story I want to project today. Genetics of the animal itself, or as Bram talked about before, the plant itself is fundamentally important. And I'm excited about what genetic potential brings and has delivered for hundreds of years through domestication, going all the way back to the rich tradition of the UK, going back to Robert Bakewell. Genetics can make a difference in everybody's business. It's already making a difference in your business. I want to talk about what genetic potential can be and how we're on the cusp of the next true, what I believe is a revolution in how we can impact everybody's business and society and the world as a whole. I'm not going to talk about all of the challenges agriculture will face. I think we've already done a nice job talking about that this morning, whether that's UK, whether that's regional, whether that's global challenges. Genetics is part of the solution. And it happens, though, in the holistic context. Genetics is not going to solve everybody's problems. We need to work with management. We need to work with good soil health. We've heard a lot about that. But if you've not got the genetic potential in the seed that you're putting in that healthy soil, you're still missing out on huge opportunity. So our job, what I wake up every day trying to do, is to create better animals than the ones we had last year that contribute to the future success of the business and the industry. Now, I work for a company called PIC. Incidentally, that's the Pig Improvement Company. So it does exactly what it says on the tin. I'm a huge, I said livestock fan, but huge disclaimer here, I'm a complete pig guy, but nobody's perfect, right? Now, PIC has a strong history and is the global leader in disseminating pig genetics. In fact, like many good ideas, this is coming home for PIC. We originated in an Oxford pub, dreamed up by a bunch of farmers, like many good ideas. And what I want to talk about before we get into gene editing and the huge potential of that, and why I'm so excited about it, is because gene editing is only a tool. Let's not talk about what genetics is already doing. We can talk about genomics. We can talk about new technologies. But fundamentally, I think one of the things that we need to own as geneticists is that we have not talked enough about how much genetic improvement has changed over the years. Going back to the conversation this morning from Neil, I remember going to the mart with my grandfather. I think the idea of a genetic improvement program to my grandfather was looking over the fence saying, that looks like a good tub. Maybe that's not the best way to go. What we talk about in the context of genetic improvement today with multinational breeding companies is you can see that we are working on a very balanced and extensive breeding program. We can deliver solutions that are truly win-win for all stakeholders across the chain. Yes, we can drive economic success, but we can also deliver on multiple social outcomes. Frankly speaking, I don't think animal geneticists have done enough talking about that and shown them what we can deliver. As an example of innovation that's already happening, we've already talked about AI. Pig farmers, well, in the past, we used to do selection via human scorers looking at the conformation of the animals. We've now got computer vision driving in our nucleus farms, building these artificial skeletons, so that way across each and every farm in our system, we've got the same evaluation. That has tripled the heritability of this trait. Why? Because you're moving the human error. That's game-changing. That means we can improve that trait 3 times as fast. Let's think about that. These are animals that are not going lame. These are animals that are getting to market. These are sows with a long and productive life. These are fundamentally positive welfare outcomes, great from an economics perspective, and less resources being wasted. AI technology is here today. This isn't jam in the future. That's implemented. It's already making a difference in pig breeding systems. So I want to talk about, get into the context of the real nuts and bolts of this presentation, PRRS and its impact. PRRS is reproductive and respiratory syndrome, porcine reproductive and respiratory syndrome. It is a devastating animal disease, and it is endemic from a global perspective. Here in the UK, I've spoken to many farmers from the Norfolk-Suffolk area. Basically, if you're in that area and you're driving around, I guarantee you've probably driven by an outdoor pig farm. Generally speaking, these are constantly in an endemic state of this disease. Why? Because you've got no biosecurity, you can't, the animals are going to get sick. And as you can see here, from an impact on growing pigs, an impact on breeding pigs, we have got a severe issue from a global perspective, and it's a huge economic concern. PRRS was first identified back in the 1990s, simultaneously labs in Minnesota in the United States and in Lelystad in the Netherlands, and we've still not got a really good solution for this virus. And as you can see, when it comes to pretty much all of the major pig-producing countries, with the exception of Brazil, this virus is everywhere. It's fundamentally devastating. So, what has been the outcome of decades and decades of research done here in the UK and also globally? Working with groups like the University of Missouri and also the Roslin Institute in Scotland, we have been able to identify a gene edit or a simple cut in the genome that confers true resistance to the disease. I know this starts seeming a bit like science fiction, but it's like a light switch. You can simply make an animal that doesn't get sick with this disease. Go into some of the technical details. What we can understand, what we learned through some of our virology work is that there was a specific domain in a gene called CD163, domain 5, that if you simply remove that particular domain, it basically changes the receptor so the virus can't bind and be brought into the animal. We have done multiple different tests in terms of different strains of the underlying virus. We have done, obviously, different lines, and we are now 3 generations away from the original edited founder animals. So this edit is inherited just like a normal mutation. So we can confer true resistance. And fundamentally, what's really important about this technology, different to the GMO debate in the past, there is no external DNA introduced. This is simply just taking some base pairs out that can happen on a normal, from a generation to a generation perspective. And what we've done within the context of Genus and PIC is try to be very transparent in how we've done that. We understand that commercial acceptance is very important. We're working with legislative authorities. I'm going to talk about that soon. But you can see there's multiple publications in the public domain, peer-reviewed, that have been showing how we've gone about this and that this product is safe and repeatable. So how do we talk about it? When I first heard about this technology, ladies and gentlemen are in the room, so I'm not going to say the exact words that I said, but I was like, how? It was truly a mind-bending moment for me. I mean, I did my PhD at the Roslin Institute on natural variation for disease resistance to the PRRS virus. So the fact that we could turn it off, to me, was just something out of a science fiction movie. But then my second thought was, well, we're just going to say, we're going to run into the same aspect and the same headwinds that we had from the GMO debate back in the 1980s and 1990s. So what did we learn? I think that we need to talk about gene editing and the benefits of this technology for the whole chain. And we need to understand what's in it for the people that we're talking about. It's easy to turn around and have a discussion with a farmer and say, yeah, I mean, you're going to remove this disease, great. Yeah, I'm going to make more money. But that's not the point. There are so many more benefits to these technologies and what it can bring for all of society and the whole production chain. And whether we're talking to farmers, whether we're talking to processors, whether we're talking to retail or food service industry, or the consumer themselves, we need to understand the benefits that this can bring. And I'm going to talk through a few examples of why I believe that removing PRRS from the UK industry can be fundamentally a game-changing technology. Start with animal welfare. I am passionate about animal welfare, and I think genetics can deliver on animal welfare in many different aspects. Going back to the Bramble Report in 1965, we talked about and developed the 5 freedoms. Everybody knows about that. From an animal welfare research perspective, from the academic perspective, we now talk about 5 domains models and these sort of things. But fundamentally core to all welfare is the freedom from disease. I have the humble privilege, as Mario turned around and said in the introduction, to work with farmers from rural Uganda all the way through to Spain to the UK. We can talk about production practices. We can talk about housing. The biggest contributor to poor welfare that I see are sick animals. We all know, we've all worked on the farm. An animal that is sick has got poor welfare. So I think if we can package this technology to say we are addressing animal disease, that is a huge contribution to society in addressing the needs. Human health. When we talk about this technology, I'm using PRRS as an example, but this can apply to any disease in any animal or any crop. Thanks, Bram. We know that a continued challenge is the reducing the antibiotics in the food chain. And I think the UK has done a great job and should be very proud of ourselves of what we've done. You can see in the bottom bottom right-hand side of the screen here, figures from AHDB and the continual reduction of the antibiotics. But we're sort of starting to level out, and indeed, in last year, we had a slight increase. We've done the important work. We've taken a lot of the prophylactic use of antibiotics out. What's next? PRRS is an immunosuppressive virus. Yes, you're not going to treat a virus with antibiotics. But if an animal is in an endemic state of PRRS, then what you're going to have is more exposure to those secondary bacterial disease. And work from Iowa State has shown that if you're in a PRRS negative state, you're going to have significantly less use of antibiotics and antimicrobials in that production system. So I see this technology as the next step change in driving down that use. And likewise, if we start then going, well, we've got healthier animals, they're growing faster, they're converting feed better, naturally we're doing more with less, and that leads to climate benefits. PIC has already undertaken a life cycle analysis, and we've published it, to turn around and say, what is the benefit of standard genetic improvement to address some of these climate issues? We can see that elite genetics are about 7% more climate efficient than non-elite genetics. But likewise, cumulatively, year on year, that genetic improvement means that you have got a lower carbon footprint. Question to the room, How many farmers are getting the credit from a climate perspective on using improved seeds on your farm or improved young stock coming in? Nobody. Why is this missing in terms of a true contribution to ongoing sustainability? I think we're missing a huge opportunity in saying, even right now today, we should be capturing that opportunity and being credited as an industry for that ongoing improvement and what it delivers. And fundamentally, going from an endemic disease state to a healthier state is going to lead to more of those contributions. So what we can see here, and I hope I've transmitted the message quite well, if we start to package or talk about these new technologies in the context of the value it can bring to society, I think that is really a positive offering. And think about it from a rural community perspective. How many of you guys are working with farmers or on your own farm have got sick animals? Personal story here. Back when I was a teenager, I remember when my father's pig farm broke with PIRS. I remember dragging the dead pigs out of the pen. I saw what it did to my dad. Not fun. So let's not contribute, or let's not miss the huge social good that these technologies can bring to rural communities and those people who are working with livestock every single day of the week. Now, what's important, as I started off, regulation and dissemination. We understand that there is a global supply chain. Key message for the room. Having a non-uniform legislative process globally for these new technologies is a bad deal. And right now we've got a huge spread in terms of what this means. Some countries, and I'll talk about it later, are more progressive than others. That's going to impact the flow of product. And let's face it, these technologies and standard genetic development really offers great opportunities, no matter if you're a regenerative farmer, organic farmer, or a standard commercial farmer. But just because you've got the regulatory pieces in place does not mean we're going to commercialize that. We need to understand, and we're already trying to work through and develop all of the markets from an export perspective, as well as those markets that are actually producing the pigs, so we can harmonize the regulations around gene editing technology. So where are we at today? What we can see is there's a huge, broad spectrum. If we start looking at Colombia and Brazil, there is already positive determination for the PIRS-resistant pig. What does that mean? Legislatively, they do not differentiate this, because there's no external DNA coming in, from standard animal breeding. Other countries are taking a different approach. For example, the United States of America, where they're going for more, instead of a determination approach, they're going for an approval approach. So PIC and my colleagues over the pond are working very closely with the FDA to go through the approval process. My point is, we're not in a vacuum. These pigs are on the ground. As I said, we're already multiple generations away from the original edit. Countries are moving. These technologies are fundamentally going to change global animal protein supply. So, when we start talking about the benefits, I'm truly excited. I think that this is the next great leap in agriculture. I truly believe that animal protein chains, plant breeding as well, 10 years from now is going to be vastly different in terms of the technologies that we can bring. I do think that Europe and the UK has a fundamental choice. Are we going to be in this or outside of this? So, as I finish up here, these are truly exciting times. We have access to technology that fundamentally is game-changing, almost like science fiction. I'm passionate about the good that this can bring to society and for all stakeholders in the chain. However, we need to choose whether we're on that bus or not on that bus. But we should not be naive that the rest of the world is moving in that direction. What does that mean for our export destinations? What does that mean from an import perspective? But as my final comment, as animal breeders, with or without this technology, we wake up every single day trying to make your animals better for you. It's a privilege to work in the agricultural sector, and we sit right at the base, the foundation stone for all of your success. Thanks very much.